Hello, my name is Walter Schmidt. You are on the Walter Schmidt Show today. Again, hello, how are you? And today it's not just a day, it's something special. I have a special guest here, another one. As you know, there is so many, but this time it is also about yachting. And it's not about a builder, yacht builder. It's not about a yacht broker. It is about a great personality. Name Pippa Nicholas. I don't know how many of you know someone with those great name. You won't forget that name. However, I'm really honored to have you on my show today because we will dig it deeper into a topic that is not very broad known typically. Now, hi, Pippa, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm
Thank you.
very privileged.
I'm privileged too, but you know what? I don't want to talk about too much about you because I'll let you talk. Now, tell us a little bit about you, where you came from originally, where did you went, and what are you doing beside yachting stuff or within the yachting stuff? Because it's something a little bit different than typically people expect.
Sure. So, yeah, this is my 50th year in the maritime industry. I went to sea when I was 14 years old. Um, Born in the UK, brought up in my early years in the UK. I went to a naval college, went off to sea, moved to Australia, spent 22 years in Australia. Now I live in the US. Um, as I say, 50 years in the maritime industry. Came ashore finally in 2004, and we set up this business that I run today. It's called Yachtprojects International, and yeah, it's been an exciting 18, 19 years running this. I run it with my wife, and we have people based in the UK and Spain.
Mhm.
And as a company, we're very diverse. We do communication systems and uh, toilets and water makers and anti-foul systems for commercial ships and yachts all over the world. Travel an awful lot, deal with shipyards, individuals, um, management companies, that sort of thing. I also do a show on yacht on the Super Yacht Radio. Dave and I do a joint show every couple of weeks called Walking the Plank, where we discuss various topics. Some of them that we know a lot about, and some that we know nothing about. But it's all a bit of fun, and it uh, lends a bit of uh, cruelty to this time that we have in COVID.
Mhm.
Anyway, how are you doing there? Where are you based? I don't know where you're based. You're in Europe somewhere.
Well, first of all, I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And I'm in Switzerland, so it's absolutely not a country for typically yachting people. So it's a little bit strange for some listeners. But nevertheless, though I wrote the book Super Yacht Sales, which has to do with communication. And by the way, communication fits a little bit technically wise in your business, as you have to do with communications a lot. And that's what it is right now here. But now I have a question to you because, you are so for such a long time in this business. You are almost, well, there is a saying, but I don't say that now like dinosaurs. But
Oh, thank you.
those who are 50 years plus are to me dinosaurs because they know much more also about the whole industry, how the development came across. And I don't know if you have really started with what you're doing now with the communications. And I think a lot of people are curious about how did you achieve this great successes, this stability with your business and doing so many things. I mean, how did you start it with that?
So when I first went to sea, I originally wanted to go to sea as a radio officer. Now, back in the days, commercial shipping um, was a little bit different to it is today. So uh, back in the day when um, they the shipping company didn't actually own the radio equipment on board the ship. It was a service that they leased in from a company called Marconi. And Marconi then provided the operators to, to give the service to both the ship and to the port agents and everything else. And they were called Marconi men and radio operators. And of course, the school I went to, the naval college I went to, we had an option there to we did our normal education, you know, our schooling education, and we, as part of that training, we trained in communications in semaphore, and if our listeners know what that is, Morse code, which I'm sure we've all heard about, and that, you know, that was the basics of it, and flag signals and things like that. Now, you know, it is 50 years ago, but in essence, 50 years ago, that was very much the method of communication, along with HF radio, so that was my plan. My father was a captain, and so ultimately he was not very happy with me doing being a radio operator. So I got talked into going to sea on deck, and I was happy enough to do so. And I went to sea as a cadet. I was in the British Royal Navy as a reserve officer. I went to sea as a cadet, and so the industry at that point in time, the British industry was in decline, and so the jobs were few and far between. So on deck, the promotional side of it just sort of retreated. There wasn't the ability to go up the ladder very, very quickly. And so to cut a very long story short, I ended up briefly in the Royal Navy for the Falklands campaign, and then came back to the Merchant Navy and went back into the engine room department, because in essence you could climb the ladder quicker in the engineering department. I'd always been interested in motorbikes and cars and the mechanics of how things work, so it was my mind works that way, so it was quite easy to transfer into that. My sea time luckily was able to be carried over, and by carrying through the courses that I needed to carry through, I was able to climb the ladder quite quickly on that as an engineer. I got involved in communications, the communications that we know today, at the end of the last century. That sounds great. I love using that. So yeah. So leading up to 2000, and I got involved with not just the HF side of it and the VHF side of it, but the first satellite style communications that were becoming commercially viable. Fleet 55, Fleet 33, Fleet 77, those sort of early satellite communications, tri-axis stabilized situations, and then when I came ashore, the original part of the business was aimed at project management, so looking after owners' wishes, the owners' interests when yachts went into the yards. I was involved with a boat called Census for a very long time, and we looked after all of the interests of that boat, which allowed me also then to build a business on the side, and the communication side of it had always been of an interest, and so that sort of grew and grew and grew. Project management was great. We were making really good money some years, and then the in between years were a bit light. So the communication side of it came in to flatten off the curve of income versus outgoings and things, and perform it, hold a steady income all the way through. But having said that, to the diversity of where we went with headhunter toilet systems, as an engineer, I was involved with headhunter in the yachts that I worked on, and it struck up a good friendship with a couple of the guys in the office, and we became the European point of distribution for parts and service. And we do some sales of their systems, and their systems are very competitive, high quality, small footprint, fit the bill for the needs of yachts today really well. Comply with the highest level of IMO compliance, and they've always got the finger on the pulse there. So, the toilet system side of the business grew, and as those two staples have progressed along, other people have come to us with products and asked us to help them support them. So we're now the agents in Europe or one of the agents in Europe for FCI water makers, and more recently we've taken on a role with UltraGuard, ultrasonic anti-fouling systems, which is currently taking up a lot of my time. The communications side of the business is still paramount. Having said that, we are always, again, finger on the pulse, looking for new technology, looking to be part of the beta testing programs for a lot of the systems that are out at the moment. We did a lot of beta testing for the Certus project when that came from Iridium. We had boats out there with their systems on really early on, testing them. We highly promote Inmarsat, and the GX solution is a great solution for a global solution. Perhaps not so much for regional, but definitely on a global situation. It's very cost effective and efficient, and has built-in failovers and standby systems that work with it. So we deal again with a very diverse set of the community. Yachts have a specific requirement, should we say, that the owners want their boat to look right. So sometimes the boat looking right means that the systems are not always placed in the right place on the boat, so we end up with blockages. And then how do we work around that scenario? A long time ago, I started to understand, and I'm talking 20 years ago, I started to understand that communications as we know it today, not like they used to be. Back in the day of the Marconi man, the signal was sent from land to the boat. He wrote it all down. He then passed the message to the next person, as they required, took the answer, did it. Long drawn out process. Telegrams, that sort of stuff on board. Of course, as time went on, and as we turned the century into the 2000s, email came along, electronic communication came along, and over the last 18 years, the growth of all these devices that we have, the phones and the watches and the laptops and the iPads, and as they grow and grow, and everybody's got them, so to keep up with how that is dealt with on board the boat has become a major issue. So like 18 years ago, I started a development program for a device that sits between the communication where the communication lands on the boat and how it then becomes distributed throughout the boat. And of course, we all know that as a firewall, or in the yachting community, of course, there are some hardware solutions out there that seem to be very prevalent. So, so our solution for that is very diverse. I mean, it's a true solution. Somebody comes to us and asks us to provide them with a specific solution, a bespoke solution for their ship. We're able to do it through our system, down to one owner asking us once on his world tour that he wanted his curtains in his cabin to open at dawn wherever he was in the world, and that was his alarm clock. Yeah, so we fixed that. We made that happen for him.
So that means as well, actually, that requires extremely well knowledge about the technology part, and also the transformation, as you just mentioned, into the new technology. Let's call it the new century. That was a huge step that you had to follow up, and obviously you became a market leader in terms of bringing in solutions for the client's needs. Is that right?
So yeah, yeah, I'm still old school though. I I don't I don't struggle too much with my own communication issues, but I still like to keep things pretty basic. So it's important that when you have a vision as a person, you have a vision about uh, how you want to deal with the end user. How do you deal with that client?
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you able to say yes to just about everyone? And a lot of people fall short because they do say yes to everyone. There becomes a time when you can't just say yes. You have to say uh, yes, but there
Mm.
are ways. I mean, and for us to do that, it's all about a team. It's all about the people behind, behind the eight ball, behind you, behind me, the guys that work in the back office. Um, I can't write a piece of code for, my PIN number for my ATM machine is the best code I know. And that's 4 digits. After that, I tend to lose on. So I can't do code or anything like that. But I have guys, we found people over the years that are able to do that. I have guys who know networking inside out, who I can say to them, uh, I'm that bridge, that gap between the client that actually doesn't really know what he wants. He just
Mm.
he just, well, he knows exactly what he wants, but he has no way of putting that into the terminology of how to make it work. I'm the person between him and my guys who speaking zeros and ones. They don't have a real language; they speak geek. Um, so that I can get in between them and ask them and guide them as to what I need and how I need it done, and therefore they produce the product that goes to the end guy, and I sit in the middle.
Yeah. So how important then, in terms of what you just mentioned, is communication in between the people? Because that requires that you have both views, both side of views from the client side and also from your team side. That is a little bit different. You close the gap. So how do you keep up with the experience and the know-how in the communication in this regard?
Well, so the community, I mean, obviously to the end user, it's pretty simple. It's pick a phone up. Zoom has become the COVID tool. Um, so it's a matter too of interpreting the end user. So quite often with a boat, you're talking to a captain who actually isn't the end user. So he's interpreting what the owner wants.
Mm.
He's also putting his own piece in there. He's thinking about the crew. So they quite often have real, they know what they need to do to provide the service down there. They come to us, they'll ask me, how do we do that? Well, I understand how it works in the fields, but I don't know how to do the bit behind it. I don't know how to write the code to make that happen. To do, sure, I can go to the screens and I can push this and push that, and
Mm.
you but I don't know how to do that. So it's a matter of being able to um, understand what the end user wants, and
Yeah.
sometimes you've got to interpret that. So it's sometimes very hard to get it exactly right first time round, and then with our solutions, what we're able to do is we can spend up to a week more sometimes doing the initial setup of a system on a boat. um, so behind me, this mini cruise ship in the picture behind me, it's one of three almost sister ships,
Mm.
and they all do just about the same thing. They all go off down to the Southern Ocean and up to Antarctica and things in the various months. Uh, they you think that each ship being a sister ship, almost a sister ship, would have exactly the same solution. Well, they don't. Somewhere down the track, there's a little bit, there are nuances in the way that the boats run. So we had to develop solutions for each of the ships, manage the needs of 300 passengers and 60 crew with a very limited network and bandwidth available, that was available on board them. So it's learning how to do the communication in either direction. So there's politics involved as well, of course, and perhaps there's a few white lies there here and there. uh, small small, and if anybody in this industry tells me that they don't do it, then that's a big lie. That's a black lie, not a white one. Because
Okay.
we all tell little porkies here and there every now and again. It's the way of life. It's you can't, they're not major. They're just, yeah. We there are statistics, there are mathematical solutions. You cannot have 350 people on 3 megabits of data and provide a perfect service to everybody. It doesn't work mathematically. It just can't.
So it's
But in
easy.
practice, you can sometimes make it work. Yeah.
Okay,
So it
so
appears
it's
to work.
actually pretty easy to find by the end from your side at least a solution. But now you were talking about 300 people on a boat, which that's not a super yacht, that's a cruising boat, and
That's a small cruise ship. Yeah.
for a small cruise ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there a difference for you now in your work, in your job, or in your procedure? If there is the question, what is the difference between working for or on a cruising boat or on a super yacht? Are there major differences or are just minor difference?
In essence, nowadays, the difference is, um, on a yacht, you're usually dealing with, for 80% of the time, you're dealing with just the crew. And then, 20% of the time, you've got the owner on board, or a principal or a charter guest or somebody who's decides that they're more important than the crew, the captain, and everybody else. So on a cruise ship, for instance, you're dealing with a changing role of principals. So you've got 300 principals, if you like, and they're changing out every 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a lot harder to deal with that sort of scenario than it is to deal with just a single yacht. But too, once a principal of a yacht is on board, the demands are excessive. I mean, they are, if you make a mistake with them, you've made a mistake. If you've made a mistake with 300 people, they've got off the boat, and then the new 300 get on it in 2 weeks' time. Um, you do it with a principal of a vessel, it can be terminal for you, when you
Okay.
make that mistake. So yeah, it is a different scenario. In everything that we do, and we were not just this morning. I was talking to some people about the the ultra guard part of our business, the anti-fouling part of our business, and we've a lot of the testing and early stuff that we're doing with this has been towards the commercial side of it. So a lot of the examples that we have are commercial ships, ferries and crew, and of course, you take a photo of that and you send it to the engineer of a yacht. He's going to go, holy heck, what, I can't have that in my engine room because his engine room is bright white, sparkly white, and everything else. And of course, if the engineer is from a commercial background, yes, he understands it because he's seen it in the past. If the engineer's come through the train and he's only ever worked on yachts, which quite a few of them have, they nearly die. They wouldn't, because their engine room you can eat off the floor. And of course, we're trying to prove a principle on that as opposed to the final item. And of course, once we've done the installation and finished it, then we do finish up and do the right painting and finish, give it a standard. I think one of the beautiful things about what I do to make money is I don't look at what I do as a job.
Mm.
I don't have a job. People say to me, what do you do for a living or for a job? I don't have a job. I have a lifestyle. My lifestyle affords me the ability to travel around the world and make money and live the way that I want to live. And I'm
Maybe we should talk another time about that part. Not
yeah,
having a job, but having a lifestyle.
it's yeah, and my lifestyle's different. I mean, I was born a 10-pound 8-ounce baby boy, and I now live as a woman. You try doing that in this commercial shipping industry. There's another story there, completely. The maritime industry in general is a very male dominated industry,
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, there's some very strong females coming through in it, but there's not many of me, um, And I've faced it. And you stand up to it. Nowadays, I don't even think twice about it. It is what it is. People see me and I
That's
talk with a
awesome.
deep voice.
I mean, that's also, I think that's a very, very important message to the world anyway, to not only about acceptance, but also to look at what is really the value that somebody brings in. And that leads me now to the very important question. I mean, you have competitors. I don't know how many, not too many, most probably, but you do have competitors. Now, what is the difference, or what makes it that people should come to you as clients? What is the why? Why should I go with you as a customer and not with somebody else?
Discovering new and extremely remote places on this earth pushes men and technology to the limit. Communications on board and with the rest of the world from very remote places was a huge issue.
A lot of the deepest parts of the ocean are in very remote areas that are not close to any shoreside support.
Yachtprojects International and Procom 365 were chosen to design, install, commission and support this venture.
I own Yachtprojects International and Procom 365. Yachtprojects is aimed at the yachting market and Procom is aimed at the commercial shipping market. The intricacies of running 4 different businesses off the boat
to projects such as this that make a huge impact.
Despite the incredible complexity, diverse requirements and global reach of the project, Yachtprojects International, Procom 365 and their partners provided reliable, consistent communications, supporting a venture that pushed the limits of marine technology. If you need good communications in any marine environment, you need Yachtprojects International, Procom 365 and their partners.
It's simple, really. It's very, very simple. Please go to everybody else. Go to all my competitors. Go to all of them. Ask them for what they can give you, and then come and give us a chance to tell you what we can do for you. That's the same end service, if not better, and for a different cost. It's highly important that competition exists in the marketplace. And yes, we do have some competitors, some we work with, some we don't work with. I quite openly work with competitors because we're not everything in the marketplace. You can't be. We all need to know where our strong points are, and we all need to know where our failures are. And a failure is a point where you need to ask for help, and therefore you ask the next best person to do that is your competitor. As long as they're supplying something that you're not, then yeah. But it's also very important for the end user, the person out at the end of the road, to compare apples for apples. It's the oldest saying in the book. Don't go down to the store and see an apple for $1 and then buy a banana for 80 cents and think you got a better deal on an apple, because you didn't. You bought a banana. So yeah, and again, in the communication side of this business, it is so diverse. There are so many options. Every single scenario that comes in the door for me, I've got 2 or 3 or 4 options that they can go for. And inside of each of those options, there is an infinite selection of costs for bandwidth, for where you're going to be in the world. It's infinite, and it's so hard to get an apples for apples.
Yeah. Isn't it also that in especially in this field that you work, that sometimes there are questions comes up, and then you need also some support, some help, whatever it is, whether it's technical wise or otherwise. And now in this regard, what do you think? Coaching, is that something which is of importance in your particular niche of the industry?
When you say coaching, in terms of what?
In terms of either way, communication in sales or internal communication, or in the structure of the business, in the development of the business. So whatever issues or challenges a company would face. So that's, if there is a need, or let's say it would make sense to have a coach that guides you or supports you in your decision making?
Sure. Right. So about 6 months ago, I made a very, very conscious decision that the guerrilla tactics for marketing that a lot of people use, I I don't like them being thrown at me. So and I sort of sat down and thought, is that what I'm doing to other people? So and perhaps we do in some places, perhaps we do. So for me, I made this conscious decision to become a person that tries to educate people more in what is available. And so coaching, yes, but I'd like to do it through education, is to, I have many years of experience in everything that we've done, many years of experience. So both in life, both in work, both in, I've been married 5 times, I've got 7 kids, da, da, da. So there's uh, a huge amount of information stored that needs to be able to be given to other people or shown to other people. So I made this conscious decision to try and educate people in the fields that we specifically work in. And I've taken on several mentorships with various associations. I'm a member of a maritime association called the Honourable Company of Master Mariners in the UK. It's an ancient tradition which comes back from medieval times, and so part of that organisation and part of what I'm doing within that organisation is mentoring people who are looking at going to sea in the first instance, and why is there a choice to go to sea, and how much has the ocean changed, working on the ocean changed since I went to sea. I mean, we're talking about autonomous ships now. We're talking about ships that run around the world with nobody on them. Oh my goodness. I can think of sometimes back in my times at sea when we had 30 people on the ship and the ship still had its own life because most of us were in the bar. No, we shouldn't say that. And I think we make light of things like that, but that stuff happened, and it's different today. The rules and health and safety and that sort of stuff have changed what we see today so differently from when I went to sea originally. And I don't want to sound like the dinosaur, as you put it earlier on. I mean, I've grown with it. I've changed my way I think about the job of being at sea. As I say, I chose to come ashore and have a lifestyle as opposed to a job per se. But education is as opposed to coaching. Education is by far more important than. And I think if you educate people correctly, you'll win their business.
Yeah. Well, and you have so much to give. I mean, this knowledge, I don't know if you have written a book already, maybe you should once, if you haven't written a book, but
if you're not the first person to ever said that, and yes, I have started it, and yes, I get to various points of that book and I think, oh gosh, and it falls apart and I go away and much as it might sound funny, I'm not a very good self-motivator.
Well, I think if it comes to a book, there are many people have the same issue that they really don't like to make a book, even though they have all the information. They would like to have a book, but not writing it. But there are solutions anyway. But in terms of giving value, I mean, with your experiences now, for people who are either way new in the business, not too long, or if they want to change into this particular yachting business, perhaps in this time that we have now, which is pretty challenging for a lot, what would be your advice to make as the first few steps to make it correct?
I think And this is what you've hit on is really prevalent at the moment, especially with Facebook and social media and LinkedIn and the cruise industry where it is at the moment. For instance, with COVID, every ship's in cold layup at the moment. There's a lot of commercial shipping guys looking for work in the yachting industry. And in fairness, I mean, I had a guy this morning on LinkedIn sent me how do I'm a HVAC, an air conditioning engineer on a cruise ship, and I want to get into yachting. I think he in the brief to and fro that we had on email this morning, he I think he thought that he was going to that the yachting industry is like the cruise industry, that it has specific tasks for an HVAC engineer. Well, maybe one or two boats out there may have an engineer who has a really strong standing in HVAC stuff, but it's not like that in the end. So I think importantly for someone in the cruise industry looking at yachts at the moment, before you blunder in and just say the wrong thing, spend some time really researching what goes on in yachts. Don't take what you may or possibly seen on television with certain TV programs about the yachting industry as gospel truth. It may have some of those little white lies we were talking about earlier. It may have some of that in it. There's some truth in it, but and I happen to personally know both the captains that do that show very well. So yeah, there's some truth in it, but yeah. Anyway, so somebody coming into the industry and not necessarily from the cruise side of it, a greenhorn coming in, who's been in hotel industry, a stewardess that wants to come in, and there's coursework. You're working in a new environment, and go back to what I was saying earlier about how health and safety and rules and regulations have changed the maritime industry. You need a qualification to step on the boat. You need to understand basic safety, basic training. STCW is a course you have to do to understand what happens when it all goes wrong. It's not like in a hotel where you'd run downstairs and walk out into the street and wait for the fire brigade to turn up and put the fire out. In a boat, when you get a fire at sea, you need to know how to fight it. You need how there is so much that is different. There's
so it became actually harder to get into this business because the requirements are much higher than it used to be before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even 20 years ago, 20 years ago, you could walk down the dock. I'm looking for some work on a boat. Yeah, come on, come to the Caribbean with us from France, and you get to the Caribbean. You've been 6 weeks on a boat, and the next thing you know is I'm a deckhand, and 3 years later you've got 3 years of deckhand on the boat. I'll go and get my license and I'll become a bosun, and 4 or 5 years later, if you do the right things, you were a captain. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that anymore. It's actually now the other way around. I have a friend of mine was asking me to help him find some deckhands for a really interesting project that they've got going on, and he said, "Did I know anybody?" So I asked a couple of questions, and I had a cruise ship first officer who can't get a job send his CV to us saying that he was prepared to get into the industry, to go back into the yachting world. Expedition style yacht, this was as a deckhand. So yeah, it's the whole thing has changed. So in essence, back to the question is it really and truly to come at this industry from something that a totally diverse background. Educate yourself on the requirements first, the legal requirements first.
So there we are again on the education that you have mentioned, which is very important, especially in this niche, that you know what you're talking about, and that you have not only the certificates, but also the knowledge of the latest technology nowadays, which is a requirement, obviously, in the yachting industry. But Now, to come back shortly now to your business, I mean, you're diversified. It's not only into the communication, but also you mentioned something like anti-fouling. What does has this to do with the communications?
Nothing.
And that makes it interesting because you are so broad now. How does that happen?
Well, I'm an engineer. You know, I have a mind that is always looking at new things. Um, in the marketplace, so in the maritime industry, you know, we all talk, and I'm an engineer, so the the people that I talk to are always coming and saying, well, you know, what about this and what about that? And yeah, comms is one of those things. So, you know, the rules and regulations for toilet discharge, that sort of comes up, and how do we work with that? And that's our head-onto toilet system that we do. How do we manufacture water at sea? That's our, you know, that's our water maker side of it. And then, you know, from the anti-fouling side of it, so the rules for anti-fouling paint, and you know, to somebody who doesn't understand this, you're going to say, well, what rules? You know, you put paint on the bottom of the boat and then it stops stuff growing. Well, you know, all those paints 15 years ago, 20 years ago were poisonous. They're copper based. They carry algicides in them and things to stop stuff growing. And the word is ablative. So it's a coat of paint that you put on, and as the ship moves through the water, it strips the micro layers of this paint off. And of course, anything attached to it falls off into the ocean. So basically, all these ships, these millions or hundreds of thousands of ships running around the ocean, are putting nasty things into the water.
Yeah.
So so over the years, there's been several methods employed to stop growth occurring on the bottom of ships. They use impressed currents, electrical currents. They use anodes for that sort of stuff. And again, but those anodes degenerate over time, so you're putting copper into the water. The situation that we found ourselves in a while ago was that I'm always looking to protect oceans as well. So we're always looking for the environmental things. Will I go and stand in front of a building with a flag waving a flag around Greenpeace saying, no, I'm not that sort of, I don't hug trees, and I'm not quite that level of it. But I do have you know, the ocean gave me my living for 50 years. And we need to protect it. And I truly believe that. And so when the opportunity came along to have a service to provide an anti-fouling system that didn't do any damage to the environment, I jumped on it, and I thought, you know, this is really where this is worth putting. Well, in the first instance, it's worth putting 20 minutes of my life in to listen to the guy. Yeah. And then as the 20 minutes came on, that 20 minutes turned into an hour, turned into 3, turned into half a day. And then it turned into like 3 or 4 days later, talking to him again for a couple of days. And now it's become, you know, one, it's commercially viable. It's good income for me. It's commercially viable for the end user. It's absolutely perfect for the environment. You know, three positives. You've got a solution
that is a lot. But also it shows me absolutely clearly that there is not only an engineer in your brain, there is an entrepreneur. And is it correct when I say motivation to get up every morning? Even, I mean, I think you don't have to work if you don't want to, but isn't it that also that you are driven by a purpose, by the why, and by just being in the lifestyle by doing what you do?
So I said earlier that I'm not self-motivated, and I'm not. You should see me at 6 o'clock in the morning when the alarm goes off. And I travel insanely, and even in COVID, I've been traveling insanely. So my body clock is completely screwed up. You know, and I deal with time change quite well. My body does. for a 60 plus something person. So the motivation for doing things like exercise and writing a book is, but my sort of want of knowledge, if you want, that idea that there's something else around the corner. And yeah, you know, as growing up, I invented some things, and I had patents, and I invented an oil cooling, an oil filtration system when I lived in Australia, and we patented it, and you know, I sold it for $53,000 to an oil company. It was a crazy idea, but you know, 50 grand bought me a house in those days. Today, it's on the majority of engines that you see running around the world, and if I'd have had $1 for every one of those, yeah, I certainly wouldn't wanting to get out of bed and go to work. Although I probably would, because my mind says I have to do that. I've got to, yeah. There's always something new, and I truly and honestly believe that I can get up every morning and learn something every day.
I think that's a very important part in life, actually, for all of an entrepreneurship, that keeps you running and keeps you doing something. Also, having the curiosity on what is coming next, or what can I do better, faster, more efficient for the environment, for the economy, for yourself. I think that's a very, very crucial part in life of many entrepreneurs that I know. And as I can say now, when talking with you, you are obviously brain-wise, you are not in the 60s. You are somewhere far below, because you know so much more than a lot of people that I know in my age, and even younger than I am. So there's a lot to learn from you. But now what I want to have also, because we're coming now slowly to an end, time-wise as well, I could talk hours with you, days most probably, even more, but we have to end it up now shortly. But now to have a little bit more about your company, how can people reach out on you? How can they find your services?
Pretty easy, really. LinkedIn is Pippa Nicholas. Facebook is Pippa Nicholas. Much as there is so much negativity on Facebook, I really find it a great tool. I love it. I'm able to communicate with people on it, and without having to write emails to everybody. Everybody sees what we do, and some of it's tongue in cheek. I mean, some of what I do is there's an aspect of sarcasm to a lot of what I do. That's old British humor. But yeah, so the company is Yacht Projects International. You can find us just about anywhere, hashtags on those sort of things. The website is yachtprojects.net. Do not put .com, otherwise it goes to one of our competitors, who is a very good friend of mine. And actual fact, I've been trying to get the .com off him for years, but he doesn't use it. So anyway, long and short of it, I haven't got it. It is yachtprojects.net. Our communications, our commercial shipping communications is a company called Procom 365, professional communications 365 days of the year, where that came from. And that is a .com company. So Procom365.com, yachtprojects.net. Phone numbers are there, WhatsApp's there, it's all there. Please reach out. We can answer questions, and if I can't answer the questions, I can certainly find somebody that I know that can, for whatever you need. It's pretty simple.
Okay, very good. Now for the listeners as well, you have heard now how you can reach Pippa Nicholas. And not only that one, but you will find here within this talk as well some links. Don't miss her. Humor is a very important part as well in life and in business. But however, the contact details you'll find here, I will put them everywhere within this time of this half an hour, 40 minutes, so that also all the companies are discoverable for you as a listener, and also, of course, for the viewers of this video. And if you want to reach out in communications for yachtings, for commercial boats, but also for super yachts and luxury yachts, or anti-fouling, or whatever it is in this regard of yachts, there is the right person, personality, a very special personality, and you will have not only the experience of some years, no, you have experiences of 50 plus years. So there is nothing better than Pippa Nicholas if it comes to a business with communications on the yachts, anti-fouling, or other issues that has to do with the knowledge of an engineer. And this background, nobody can take it away, but you can take away a lot of value for you. And now, Pippa, what is the last thing, advice that you would give to the listeners and the viewers of our amazing interview?
Have fun. And as a real old gentleman in England who died recently, who reached out to the world's hearts, tomorrow will be a better day.
That is a quote that really everybody can use now and everybody needs. And it was an honor to me with you, Pippa, to have this amazing interview. I'm really blessed to have you had in this show, Walter Schmid Show. I'm looking forward that this hasn't been the last time. So I'm hoping we're catching up another time. And there you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. Be careful. Don't work. Have a lifestyle like she does, Pippa Nicholas. Walter Schmid Show. Have a good day. Bye-bye.